Welcome to Bell2Bell podcast, powered by IBN. This original audio production delivers market and sector insights, as well as exclusive interviews with innovative executives shaping the future in fast-moving industries, and may feature a client partner of IBN or one of the 60-plus investor-focused brands within IBN's dynamic brand portfolio. As a multifaceted financial news and publishing company, IBN leverages its extensive distribution network, utilizing multiple proprietary corporate communication tools to introduce both public and private companies to a vast and diverse audience of investors, consumers, influencers, journalists, and other targeted segments of the public. IBN may have received compensation to produce this audio content. Please be sure to read IBN's entire disclaimers for full disclosures. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the next revelatory episode of IBN's Bell2Bell podcast.
Hi, and welcome to another exciting show where we bring you all the insightful nuggets of information that you need to do your due diligence on a variety of stocks, companies doing amazing things out there and making impactful differences. Today, I'm excited to sit down with Nicole Brewster, President and CEO of Renforth Resources, Inc. They are on the CSE as RFR and listed on OTCQB as RFHRF. Now, Nicole, welcome. Firstly, excited to have you here to learn more about the company.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Renforth Resources, from what I understand, is an active mineral exploration company that's engaged in the exploration and development of the company's wholly owned multi-commodity mineral properties in Canada. What specific areas do you focus on, and what can you tell us about basically just the background of the company and where you are today in just a nutshell?
Thank you. So yes, Renforth is a multi-commodity junior exploration company. We're comprised of a number of retail shareholders who support the company repeatedly as they align in our vision of developing our multi-metals package, which is a 275 square kilometer, extremely well-located property in Quebec, which has a significant amount of nickel mineralization, along with an appreciable amount of zinc. And then very close by, we have our Parbec gold deposit, which sort of anchors the value of the company in that we know how many ounces of gold are in the ground. And in fact, we're in the midst of redoing that resource based on a significant amount of information that's come to light subsequent to the historic 2019 resource. And the most basic fact that when that resource was calculated, the price of gold was $14.50 US an ounce, and it's pushing 2,700 US an ounce today. So the value of our gold deposit has, without the addition of our new information, increased appreciably. So that's us in a nutshell. Two very compelling assets that give us both financial anchor and exposure into the energy transition world. And they both benefit from roads, hydroelectric power, supportive communities in established mining camps. And all of this is in a little junior company that in Canadian terms trades for $0.015. That's less in US terms.
Amazing. Yeah, so a lot of strategic advantages that you mentioned there in maintaining this diversified portfolio, right? It's pretty diverse with the ones you mentioned there, but how does this differentiate Renforth then from other junior exploration companies?
Partly it is our location. To briefly try to explain it, we're in the heart of gold country in Quebec, and arguably in Canada. We're on one of the best, most prolific, most financially important gold structures that runs for a couple hundred kilometers. And our foothold is very compelling. We're next door to Canada's largest open pit gold mine. Though they have closed the pit, they're going underground in the sediments. Not going to dive into the technical, but suffice to say, they're going underground in a setting that we mimic. We're just a little bit smaller, but we are on the Cadillac break. We see vertical continuity, or the beginning of plunging chutes. We start at surface as opposed to our neighbors 1,000 meters deep. And we have gold in the Pontiac. So it's an incredibly compelling gold story that's been overlooked because junior gold exploration has been in the doghouse really the last few years because everyone got excited about other commodities. And then our exposure to that commodity excitement is our nickel. The property is huge. hydroelectric power, roads, no people, no animals, social license with the local and the indigenous communities in place, incredibly well positioned. The main structure we're working on is 20 kilometers long, but it's one of 4 structures on the property, as well as a significant stock of ultramafics, which is what the nickel's in the center of the property. So really, we have a vast amount of material. Both properties, the mineralization starts on surface, both are unmined, and we could not be in a better place in terms of operating cheaply, every dollar going in the ground, and ready purchasers if we get to the point of mining within 45 minutes. There's one of Canada's multi-metal, the only multi-metal smelter in Canada is 45 minutes away. Gold mines next door need ounces. So we're in this great little microcosm that's going to give us a lot of room to grow.
Amazing. So that's definitely a lot of geological potential there. So, you obviously been actively exploring the properties, gold, base metals, other minerals, as you've mentioned. How do you assess and prioritize which commodities and specific properties to focus your exploration efforts on?
That's probably our main challenge. In some ways, it's defined by access to capital. In Canada, when I'm trying to raise money, we have something called flow through, and our federal government has seen fit to give extra priority to critical minerals exploration. And of course, the multi-metals package is largely zinc. But I'll explain a bit more. It's 2 bodies that intersect, and one is an ultramafic giving us nickel, cobalt, platinum, and palladium, all of which are important. And it's interlayered with a VMS giving us zinc, a bit of copper, a bit of silver, and a bit of gold. So the VMS is the one that really is hard to detect where it's going. The ultramafic is incredibly magnetic, and we have a roadmap in our surveys. So when I raise capital that's got the critical mineral bonus attached to it, the exploration goes to that property. It really is that simple. The gold property, we've done a lot of work, and really our first big step is pretty economical, and that is to restate the resource. So I've commissioned a company called SGS Canada, but SGS is a multinational company and incredibly respected and an authority. And they're in the process right now, actually, of updating the gold resource. We expect that in probably February next year, definitely by March. And at that point, we'll have a new resource benefiting from a significant amount of positive data and a better gold price. And at that point, then we can prioritize what are the next steps of the gold property. So it doesn't quite answer your question. It's a bit of a juggling match based on where the capital comes from.
Right.
And of course, today's market, people like to hear about gold. So we will tell the people what they want to hear.
There we go. And to your point, the junior mining sector, it can be challenging in terms of funding and investor confidence. But what key milestones or exploration results has Renforth achieved that you believe demonstrate the company's potential to investors?
Well, under cover of a market that wasn't worried about battery metals, a couple of years ago, I staked the multi-metals package, which is now a huge property, and we know it's prolific base metals or battery metals. It's sitting there because it's in an area that was underexplored, because it's right beside, as I told you, the Cadillac Break, Canada's most prolific gold structure. So nobody was looking for base metals. It's that simple. Nickel is, of course, not the sexiest of the battery metals right now. From a macro perspective, Indonesia has just flooded the market with the help of the Chinese. However, Indonesia is now capping their production because they only have a finite amount of material available. So that will be reflected in the nickel price. In addition to that, there's security of supply chain is a concern. So a North American source of nickel, in order to, in the United States, the benefit to EV purchasers of green metals, Indonesian nickel doesn't give you that benefit. ESG is a concern as well. So, we're different in that there's only a handful of nickel stories in North America, and we're one of them. And we're arguably the cheapest stock. We have one of the biggest stories, and we have a lot of work to do. And access to capital limits the work, in part because I don't want to overly dilute the company with cheap capital. So we're doing work on our scale, and the market will come to us. The nickel market's going to come back, and the people who kind of kick the tires right now will be back as well. So, and we're doing that, which would be enough for a company, but we're doing that with a gold deposit that's going to be bigger next year in our back pocket. So we are pretty unique in that regard. Well, the last thing, I guess, is I don't get paid. The CFO doesn't get paid. We don't take money out of the company. The money goes in the ground. So we accrue on the balance sheet. We are the only debt in the company, and we'll take shares once every 2 years or so. So that sets us apart as well. It's not a lifestyle company. I'm now the second largest, to my knowledge, retail shareholder, because one of my shareholders put money in the last round and got in front of me. But I'm aligned with shareholders, and my motivation is with regard to the share price. It's not with regard to a salary.
Got it. Now, you mentioned ESG and environmental social responsibility. That's all increasingly important in mineral exploration, as you mentioned. How does Renforth approach sustainability and community engagement in the exploration projects themselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tricky one because ESG standards abound right now, and there's got to be a cohesive, there's going to have to be a cohesive way of measuring sustainability or ESG values in a company. We're not there yet. We do have the UN guiding principles, but Canada is actually a very progressive in terms of sustainability jurisdiction. Our Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada has had a long-term and one of the first roles in trying to enshrine and enact a roadmap to sustainability. As explorationists, our impact is very limited at this time. We're mapping, taking surface samples, drilling holes. Our biggest impact is when we cut down trees. But we actually do so in a manner that it opens up the forest. And it's important to remember we're operating on managed woodlands anyway. So they are trees that are being grown to be cut down. They're softwoods, they're not hardwoods. That aside, we regularly communicate with both the First Nations community, and half of our Malartic Metals package is on the treaty ground of a First Nation. We're on very good terms with, and we hire them on a commercial, normal basis for the services they can provide. We also communicate regularly with the non-Indigenous communities that we're in the area of with regards to our exploration plans. As we move forward, as our exploration becomes more advanced, and with some luck, we move forward to a mining scenario, that engagement will only continue and increase. And the First Nation that I mentioned actually has an impact benefit agreement in place with a nickel deposit about an hour to the north of us. So my expectation is we would do similar. So it's really just cognizant of, reducing our impact and limiting our operations to that which actually generates data and moves the project forwards. So we have no communities on any of our land. We have no threatened species. We have no water sources. So we're not in a vulnerable setting either.
Wonderful. Let's talk about technological developments and what trends are you looking forward to that could potentially be transformative for a company like Renforth?
There's actually a very exciting one I'm exploring. Early stage discussion, but ties back to your prior question about sustainability. And to be clear, I got to do some work to get where I'm going. So,
right.
I am the CEO and I'm an optimist, right? So it's not done yet, but there's a company in Canada which has sustainable mining technology, which basically at our gold deposit, I'm doing a few things, one of which is I've applied for a permit to dewater a decline, a ramp underground that's in place, to see what it looks like underground, to map it and sample it. And I've also applied to do some stripping on surface to remove overburden. There's no trees, it's just dirt. So it's between 1 to 3 meters of dirt. The reason for doing that would be to see the gold mineralization in the bedrock at surface. And then we would look to create a mini open pit. We'd look to blast it, take the material, process it for recovery. The reason for doing this would be to internally generate cash flow, so I don't have to keep going back to the markets. That cash flow would be invested in furthering the gold story and the battery metals story. But now I'm going to answer your question about technology and sustainability and what we can do as an exploration community. There's a company that's got this, what they call a sustainable mining technology, but fundamentally they drill a conventional hole and then they put their instrument. It's going to be a downhole geophysical tool to see the surrounding rock. It can see rock textures for maybe a half a dozen meters in all direction. And that allows them to take their technology, which is fascinating because before I met with them last week, I thought they were drilling vent raises, big holes, which is a mining technique. But actually, they've taken tunnel boring technology, which, we saw Mr. Musk re-implement tunnel boring technology, right? So they've taken tunnel boring technology, meaning they've got a drill head, which they can guide millimetrically, and they will drill a tunnel vertically right into the mineralization. And you get the return of the material. So you're not going underground and building a mine. You're not blasting. You're not doing a bunch of things. They're drilling the hole, removing the material, backfilling it with concrete. Then when you revegetate the area at the end of the operation, you wouldn't know they were there. And concrete has no negative impact in terms of being rock. So that's fascinating. That we could use at our Parbec gold deposit. And frankly, it may also have an application at the battery metals property. Right now, they've got a drill head that's 3 meters in width. And the only thing that's stopping them from deploying a bigger drill head is the actual machinery to hold up the head. So they will look to deploy a bigger drill head. They can drill in a honeycomb pattern. And both of our mineralized settings, the battery metals, the nickel, zinc, and the gold, start at surface. So this is viable technology. I've started discussions with them. I hope to implement it at the gold deposit. Saves me from building an open pit, which has all of the, it's doable, but it's a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of impact. This is far less impact. And they're also brand new technology and they need a guinea pig. So maybe we'll be that guinea pig. I'm quite excited about it. There's a lot that's got to happen before it deploys, but if it does, we'll be doing something in a brand new way in a very old established mining camp where nothing changes. And I'd love to be the disruptor in the camp. So cross your fingers for me.
Done. Sounds like you're absolutely on the right track. Which brings me to my next point. Obviously, as a woman myself, I'd like to know how you're navigating the strategies and the perspectives in this traditionally male-dominated mining and exploration industry. Like, what unique perspectives and leadership strategies have you found the most effective?
It's a tricky question. It's a slippery slope. I mean, I went to a mining symposium last week wearing socks with Ruth Bader Ginsburg on them while I was on stage, right? One woman clocked the socks. Well, the guys all wear their suits and fancy socks, so why can't I wear fancy socks with my suit? It's a tricky one. I deal with people at face value. I'm very old school. I was brought up in this world, and to me, your handshake is your word. Of course, there are lots of bad actors, and you get screwed. Pardon the French, I guess. But I deal with people at face value. I'm extremely concise and clear in what I say and want and demand, and I mean what I say. So there's no doublespeak. There's no hidden meaning. I don't play games. You can determine yourself what label gets attributed to me, but you gotta be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And any CEO in my position in junior exploration takes body blows constantly. And I mean, you can't please all the people all the time. If I please anyone at any one time, I continue that phrase to say, if I please anyone at any point in time, it's a miracle. Run with it. But I don't differentiate myself as a female, is the way I approach it. Because there's different ways to approach that scenario. And there are other women in my role. But, I don't ask anyone to do anything I wouldn't do myself.
Right.
I'm very much a straight shooter. I'm extremely plain spoken. I'm a horrible promoter because I'm a little too literal. But I find like all the men I deal with, I don't actually perceive that they're dealing with me. The men I work with don't deal with me first as a woman. They're just dealing with me as an entity. Now, when I'm marketing, when I'm on road shows, when I'm in, I love sitting in my own booth. I was sitting in my own booth in Quebec City for a show. And of course, tradespeople, people who want to sell stuff come up. So I'm sitting there working on my laptop. And in my booth are three guys. My head geologist, a local consultant who's a brilliant guy, and then the old geologist who did the first material work on the Parbec gold deposits, actually my father. So, white-haired old guy. So everyone comes up and they're talking to him, telling him all the stuff they want to sell. And he lets them go for a little while. And then, because he's the old gray-haired guy, he kind of chuckles. He said, I'm not in charge. And they look at him in confusion. And he points to me. He's like, you need to talk to her. So it's life, but and nobody means that's not, they're making a mistake. They're not, they're not setting out to be. It's well conditioned, the mistake they're making. So I just find it amusing and go from there. But to be honest, I think my personality, I'm fairly aggressive. I'm very direct, fairly plain spoken. So I think they have enough to deal with just with that before they get to the I'm female.
I love it. And I think you're so right in saying that, because it's a mindset shift. It's also an energy and attitude that you bring to any interaction that's going to dictate, I think, how they perceive you. So if you're just seeing another human being that you're doing business with and coming at them pretty directly, intentionally, I believe that changes the tone without even being time to navigate that whole gender thing. You're not looking for it. You're not cowering behind it. And so it's not in your reality. I love that.
No, I'm not a people pleaser on a good day. I'm not flirting with anyone. I'm not trying to hit them socially and follow up. I'm just, I'm here for a reason, and we're going to do business or we're not.
100%. Great. So just to round up the conversation, for investors and listeners who might be new to junior mineral exploration, what key indicators or developments should they look for when evaluating the potential of a company like Renforth Resources?
It's a tricky one. Unfortunately, it's a bit of the Wild West still, and there are what we call lifestyle mining companies. So if you have any financial wherewithal, you can look at the financial statements and see the capital that comes into the company annually, and then you can see what they spend on their assets. And there's going to be a difference. Like Renforth has operating costs. We have to pay exchange fees. We have to pay our auditor, insurance, that sort of thing. But you want to see what that percentage is and determine what your comfort level is. If they're bringing in, $100 and you can only find $50 attributed to the project spend, which is in the notes of every set of financial statements in this industry, then you need to decide if you like that company or if you like better the company that's $75 is going in the ground or $80 is going in the ground. You also need to, for me, both of these properties have a business case. And a big part of the business case, a big differentiator for the Malartic Metals package and the Parbec gold deposit is where they are. We're in Quebec's near north. We're on the southern edge of what's called the Abitibi, which is a world-renowned mining district. By road, we're about 6 hours from Montreal, 7.5 from Toronto, and perhaps 12 hours to New York City. We have rail to deep water on the St. Lawrence in Montreal. It's established highways. It's federal and provincial highways, and then there's logging roads on the property, which are really nice roads too. So it's all, my cost. If you go back, if you just think of a sales business, because that's in one way, one day with some luck, that's what Renforth will be. We'll be in the business of selling gold, or we'll be in the business of selling nickel. That's what my business plan is. Now, the business of sales, you're what's called a price taker. We can't set the price of gold. We can't set the price of nickel. But what we can set or what we can reduce is our input costs. We can drive those as low as possible to increase the profit margin or the sales margin of the company. And in order to drive those costs lower, I decided to pursue properties that are incredibly well located. It reduces our cost to drill. It reduces our cost to operate. Every service we want is nearby. Every trades guy goes home at night, and we can put our stuff onto trucks and truck it 45 minutes to a smelter, truck it half an hour to another gold mine that wants to buy it. So you got to see, is there actually a business case? And I put forth that, a small and scale's huge. The gold deposit, I wish the scale would be bigger, but the gold's going to go straight down. So scale doesn't really matter in that regard. Due to the nature of the structure we're on, it's a very specific geological model. The nickel property is vast. We've got a 20-kilometer structure. We have a sister structure, same size. We have 2 more showings. And then we have for lack of a better technical word, a giant blob in the middle that might be the source, but it's also got nickel in it. That's a lot of material. That speaks to when it gets mined, it'll be mined for a long time. So scale's important. That same material in a showing that was only 1.5 kilometers long would never be a mine, because your costs to build the mine are fixed. It's going to cost you $10 to build the mine, $10 to build, $10. There's a rule of thumb for what it costs you to mine per ton. And you have to have enough material that you make the money it costs you to build it back, and then you move forward in the future making money. And mining can make a lot of money. So location, much more important to be where we are, 12 hours from New York City. Not that New York City is going to consume nickel, but you get what I'm saying. But the eastern seaboard of the United States is key in electric vehicle energy storage, and the return of manufacturing if Mr. Trump is successful as well. So location and scale, it's got to be big, and we're big, because it's got to look like it's going to make enough money to warrant the investment of building the mine and doing all the things you have to do to build a mine. So you want to look at those 2 things, and I'd put to you something that you have to take a helicopter to 5 hours north of the last point of civilization, and you spend a fortune to MOBA drill a couple holes. You're a long way from building a mine up there, and you've got an even bigger economic hurdle to cross. So one of our biggest differentiators and advantages is our location drives our costs, our potential future costs to build a mine and produce material, probably as low as they can get, and still be in an area that welcomes mining. That's the magic.
This has been magical, getting to know you and hear more about Renforth Resources, Inc. Nicole Brewster, the president and CEO of the publicly listed company on the stock exchange in Canada, the CSE, RFR, as well as the OTCQB, RFHRF. Nicole, thank you so much.
The Bell2Bell podcast is an original content production powered by IBN, a multifaceted financial news and publishing company that delivers next-generation corporate communication solutions. Utilizing proprietary corporate communication tools such as news aggregation and syndication, social communication, and brand awareness techniques, among others, IBN introduces both public and private companies to diverse audiences to enhance reach and recognition. IBN may receive compensation for services and solutions provided to its client partners. You should assume that the owners, officers, and directors of IBN or financial analysts mentioned in this production may hold a position in and may intend to trade the securities in their own accounts. This production is not an offer or recommendation to buy or sell any securities that may be mentioned in this production. The information in this broadcast is presented solely for informative purposes and is not intended to be or should it be construed as investment advice. As in all investments, investment in the featured companies carries inherent investment risk. Listeners should review the companies thoroughly with a registered investment advisor or registered stockbroker. This production by IBN is not purported to be a complete study of the featured company or other companies mentioned. Information used in statements of fact have been obtained from featured companies and other sources but not verified nor guaranteed by IBN as to completeness and accuracy. Such information is subject to change without notice. Please see IBN's full disclaimers and disclosures at www.ibn.fm/disclaimer. Music in this episode is by Infraction. For more, visit inaudio.org.